every generation is told their war is different, that this one is necessary, just inevitable. Yet behind every headline, the same machine hums, quiet, relentless, profitable. In 1935, a retired U.S. Marine Major General named Smedley Darlington Butler gave a speech that shocked America. He was no pacifist. He'd fought in Central America, China, and the Philippines, twice decorated with the Medal of Honor. But after 3 decades of service, he broke ranks. He called war what it truly was, a racket. Butler claimed the Great War was fought not for democracy, but for dividends, a business run by the few, paid for by the many. He named names: DuPont, Bethlehem Steel, J.P. Morgan, companies whose fortunes swelled as soldiers bled. He said, "I spent 33 years as a muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer for capitalism." 90 years later, his words feel less like a warning and more like prophecy. War evolved. The uniform changed. The logic didn't. The Second World War industrialized death. The Cold War privatized it. And the 21st century monetized it entirely into stocks, contracts, and cybersecurity. The military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned about in 1961 now spans every continent: drones, data, mercenaries, media. The same profit cycle Butler mapped in 1935 still turns. Manufacture fear, sell weapons, rebuild the rubble, repeat. In boardrooms and stock exchanges, war isn't chaos, it's quarterly growth. October 2025. Israel and Hamas agree to a fragile ceasefire. 20 Israeli hostages returned. Nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners released. Western leaders call it the beginning of peace. But peace too has shareholders. While aid convoys inch through the ruins, defense contractors see a new market. Surveillance tech firms sell smart walls. Logistics companies bid for rebuilding projects. The same nations funding the bombs now finance the reconstruction. In Gaza, 100% of the population faces acute food insecurity. 32% risk starvation. Yet the world's stock in military suppliers rose 6% the week the ceasefire was announced. Butler's line echoes through the dust. How many war millionaires shouldered a rifle? Farther north, the front lines shift again. Russia strikes Ukraine's power grid. Kyiv, Odessa, Donetsk, Chernihiv plunged into darkness. Ukraine accuses Moscow of severing the external link to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, calling it energy blackmail. Washington responds by approving Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine, a deal worth billions. Each escalation feeds another ledger. Western arms companies report record orders. Fuel prices climb. Sanctions carve new markets. Butler wrote of profiteers in 1918. In 2025, they operate with algorithms, not factories. War is not declared, it's budgeted. In his book, Butler wrote that after every war comes a second racket, the cleanup. Contracts signed before the smoke even clears. He saw how the same hands that built the bombs were paid again to rebuild the ruins. He asked, how many of those who made billions in war profits ever shouldered a rifle? Nearly a century later, the pattern endures. Weapons turn to rubble. Rubble turns to contracts. Contracts turn to campaign funds. And the cycle begins again. Butler warned, a few profit, and the many pay. From the trenches of Europe to the streets of Gaza, and the power grids of Ukraine, his ledger still balances perfectly. Profits above peace. In May 2025, India launches Operation Sindoor, a precision missile strike on terror infrastructure across the border. Pakistan retaliates online, not on ground. Cyber attacks, misinformation, digital sabotage. The war most citizens never see now unfolds in code. Malware replaces missiles, data replaces blood. Yet, behind every cyber weapon lies the same contractor, the same invoice. The subcontinent's decades-old rivalry has entered a new market. Cybersecurity firms thrive, surveillance budgets expand, propaganda becomes industry. In the age of digital war, truth itself is collateral damage. So what is the racket now? It's not only tanks or bullets, it's patents, blockchains, lobbying, and the endless churn of reconstruction, a self-sustaining loop where peace is a pause between procurements. From Wall Street to Silicon Valley, from Tel Aviv to Moscow, war has become subscription-based, an algorithmic conflict that auto-renews. But what comes next? If the last century sold wars for oil and ideology, the next will sell them for data. Artificial intelligence, predictive surveillance, and automated weapons are quietly rewriting the rules of conflict. The same algorithms that recommend your next video are now deciding who becomes a target. And the same cloud companies that store your photos also host military intelligence. Defense is no longer about geography. It's about information, control, and narrative. The great powers are no longer fighting for territory, but through it, in cyberspace, in stock markets, in mines. We are entering an age where war will need no declaration, no battlefield, no uniform. A time when the first bombs may fall silently, as code, as currency, as AI whispers, shaping what billions believe. And once machines learn to wage wars for us, the question won't be who profits from war, but who owns peace. Yet beneath every ledger is a life. A mother in Rafah boiling weeds for food. A Ukrainian engineer sleeping beside a cold generator. An Indian farmer whose son never returned from the border. They are the unpaid shareholders of every war. The headlines will change. The names will change. The business will not. Because war, at its core, remains what Butler called it nearly a century ago. Not a crusade for freedom, not a clash of civilizations, but a racket. The most profitable one of all. Every empire believes its wars are unique. Each swears its cause is holy, its weapons righteous, its casualties necessary. But history is patient. It waits, records, repeats. The generals retire, the speeches fade, the soldiers are buried, and the contracts roll over to the next century. Butler wrote that there are only two things worth fighting for: the defense of our homes and the Bill of Rights. Everything else, he said, is someone else's business venture. And yet, from Sarajevo to Fallujah, from Kyiv to Gaza, we keep paying the same bill, not with money, but with memory. The world forgets too easily. That is how the racket survives, not by conspiracy, but by our silence.